My name is Marsha Diamond, and I'm New Business Development with All You Serve, and I welcome you today to the webinar. So I'd like to start today's webinar. Let me give you some housekeeping tips. First of all, if you can hear me at any time, just send me, type in a message and I will get that, just in case we have any technical difficulties. You never know. Secondly, the PowerPoint slideshow will be available for seeing again and the audio early next week. And the certificate of participation, 1 CEU credit, will be available on site at allyouserve.com. So once again, welcome to our webinar. Today's webinar is called Cold Hard Foodservice Success, and it's sponsored by All You Serve. We were very fortunate today to have DM&A on with us, and DM&A success coach, Shawn Bucher. A little bit about Shawn. Shawn is an MBA, a certified executive chef, a culinary educator, a certified food service executive, a certified culinary professional, a certified dietary manager, a certified food protection professional, and a long-time experience in our food service industry. He's worked with commercial and non-commercial, and he's helped develop food service concepts, works in fixing struggling operations, and all around wants to make you successful. So Shawn, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, Marsha. Glad to be here.
So without further ado, let's get started. Today, we wanted you to walk away with cold, hard food service success. So we're going to give you tips for elevating your patient taste experience, strategies for having food service equipment that works for you and your operation every day, and the best practices for keeping your food temperatures cold for taste and food safety. Ultimately, we want people to be hydrated and nourished. And so many people talk about hot and cold. Today, we're just going to talk about the cold perspective. Now, temperature control for food safety. We have to remember that when we get food in cold, we already have a great starting point, or at the proper temperature. So when we think about temperature control, it's really from the distributor or the local farm or the local vendor into your site. So at the point it starts in your site, from receipt to preparation, there are many, many challenged areas. And then from preparation to service, which is the meal assembly area, and then the meal delivery, from service to patients. So at any one of those points can be a challenge and can take your success to unsuccess, can take your patient satisfaction from 100% down to 30%. So at those touch points, from receipt to preparation, from preparation to service, and from service to the patients. We're going to talk about different points of that today.
So some of the things that we're going to talk about as far as tips for elevating our patient taste experience, one of the first things that we want to talk about is having the proper equipment. When we have the proper equipment, especially when it comes to cold storage, our refrigerators, our freezers, our air curtains, and some of you out there might even have blast chillers, different pieces of equipment that are meant to chill and hold cold things cold at the proper temperatures. We want to talk about what the proper equipment is and how to maintain that. So for example, we have on the slide here, milk at 40 degrees or colder has a different flavor and mouthfeel than milk that is 40 degrees or higher. Now most of you out there have probably experienced where a patient, a guest, someone gets warm milk on a tray or a guest tray or even in our vending and retail areas, and they're not bashful about complaining about it, and because it is not the way they expected it to be. And that leads us to why it's so important to understanding what our customers' expectations are. Because, you know, most of us probably grew up drinking cold milk, whether that's from cows or soy milk or goat milk or whatever form it may have come in. But we have an expectation as to what temperature and mouthfeel and flavor that has. And so when it's different than that, then we're automatically on edge. Now, if we think about what we do for a living, we are involved in food service, and we most likely, for anyone who's on this webinar today, have been or are involved in some sort of healthcare facility. Well, in many of our facilities, our guests are not super excited to be there. This is not a resort that they're paying thousands of dollars to go have an incredible relaxing experience. No, they're probably having tests done, they're probably being poked and prodded, and they're in a different state of mind. So automatically we are starting out an uphill battle. We're starting at the base of the hill and we're having to climb straight up because our guests ultimately are not happy even when they come in the doors. Now, I know there's exceptions to those rules, and ultimately we want to make the guests happy as we possibly can anyway, and food is a great way to do that. But understanding what their expectations are initially is a good way to really fight that uphill battle. We want to make sure that things like our ice creams, as the slide says, and popsicles, they're still in a solid state. If you're a guest in a hospital or healthcare environment and you're delivered a treat, and you order a popsicle or you get a popsicle and it comes to you and it's already half melted and it's a mess, then automatically you're turned off, regardless of the fact that you could get a popsicle and hey, that's exciting, but if you get it and it's not what you expected, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. So these are a couple of the different ways that if we have the proper equipment and we understand that our guests want that to be frozen, then right there we have met their expectations and we're starting off on a good foot. And it's like that with multiple items when it comes to refrigeration and chilling and freezing. Understanding what our customers' expectations and having the equipment to support that are absolutely crucial.
So, Shawn, I really concur with you. Having the proper equipment that works at the right temperatures is very crucial, especially when you get food in as receipt. When you get your food in and it's not put into proper refrigeration or holding temperatures, you already are at a disadvantage. So very, very importantly, especially at that receipt point. The second part of what you said is understand what the customer expectations are. As a dietitian, I know that different generations, different ages, for example, a young child may like a really, really chilled glass of cold milk. Well, an elderly patient may not be able to sustain that same percentage of cold. So you have to know what your expectations are and therefore have it. Just like heating temperatures, you have to know where the proper holding food is, but then you wouldn't want it to the extreme because it would scald maybe an elderly or a young child. So know what your expectations, not only from a food safety point, obviously that's your minimum absolute expectation, but then from a taste profile. And therefore, make sure your refrigeration, how you hold the food, how you plate the food, the timing from the kitchen to the patient is considered for those components. We'll be talking later on in some tools to use if you have a longer distance and therefore need some of those assistance.
So some questions that we want to ask ourselves to put ourselves into the patient's place and understand what their expectations are. Would we want to eat or drink whatever we're serving them, especially if I wasn't feeling well? So if I'm not feeling well and I get sent, if I get sent ice cream that is halfway melted, and I was really looking forward to having a nice frozen ice cream that I'd be able to kind of suck on a little bit and would help me feel a little bit more comfortable and would be what I'm used to, you know, right there, I again have struggled to meet that person's expectation. We also want to make sure, would we serve what we're serving to one of our family members or relatives or someone who's close to us? The quality, the consistency, all those things come into play. I've been in multiple facilities where things go well in conceptually. They have these ideas of things that they want to accomplish, and then when the rubber meets the road and they get down to it, they just aren't consistent about it. So when a family member or relative or the mayor or somebody comes in and all of a sudden they become this VIP, and you know, there's special attention given to it by managers and directors and people making sure that that food goes up there perfectly. But the challenge is that every guest we have should deserve the same level of treatment, regardless of their social status or relationship to us. We want to make sure that all of our patients are treated equally and that they're getting the same experience. So as we ask ourselves these questions, we can even get more specific and start asking ourselves this on a daily basis with every item. If I was getting this salad or this entree or this dessert or this piece of fruit or whatever it might be, what would I expect? If I'm ordering a banana, would I expect it to be nice, bright yellow? Would I expect it to be kind of brown and mushy? What would I expect? Now again, like Marcia was talking about, different age groups and different people expect different things. So understanding what it is that they expect will ultimately help us to live up to those expectations. So if we ask ourselves these questions, is this good enough for me to serve to anyone that I care about? Would I eat it myself? And you ask it specifically about everything you're doing. You know, does that salad look good? Does it taste good? Is it cold enough? You know, does it have too much dressing or not enough? Those are some different questions that we need to ask ourselves, especially when it comes to temperature. I don't care how nice something looks. If I order a cold salad and it comes to me and it's either lukewarm or warm and the lettuce is wilted, I automatically am turned off and have no desire to eat it. Same thing with some of our other examples. If I pick up a carton of milk and I feel that it's warm, that's just me. I'm automatically turned off and have no desire to drink it. And that's the case with a lot of patients, I think. But as we come to understand those expectations and we ask ourselves these questions, that will allow us to execute on a higher level and to meet their needs. Now, some of the strategies that we have used time and time again, myself as a consultant, others that I've worked with, there are certain industry standards that are industry standards for a reason. They work, and they work regardless of what area of the country you're in or what part of the world or what segment of the industry. They work, and that's why they're called industry standards. So how do we implement the strategies in our operation that will allow us to serve cold food cold and hot food hot and items the way that they should be served or that our patients expect them to be served? first off, we need to set the standard. We can start off by researching what standards are for certain items. ServSafe, the National Restaurant Association, there's certain food safety standards that we legally are bound to live by or to abide by. And so starting there, we understand what that standard is, and as managers and directors and supervisors, it's our job to educate and to train our staff, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but over and over again. There are some people that learn at different rates, and so I know I've been in many situations where you tell someone one thing one time and you think, oh, well, they got it. I don't need to go over this again. And then the next week you're going over it again. And that's how this works. We have to let people know that we're going to make sure everyone is up to the same standards. That's why it's so important to have those standards, is that regardless of whether it's you or one of your managers or your supervisors or anyone else you work with, a standard is a standard for everyone. And it doesn't matter if it's the night shift or the day shift. It doesn't matter if it's someone who's been there for 20 years or someone who just started. We all have the same playbook, and we all have to play from that playbook. And everybody needs to be held to those same standards. So as we teach, we set those standards, and we educate and train, we have to lead by example. We absolutely cannot tell people that, you know, this is important to me and it's important to us as an organization, and so I need you guys to do this, but I'm not going to do it. Why? Because it's uncomfortable, or I don't really like it, but it's a standard and everyone has to do it but me. You know, that automatically turns people off and will push them away from giving you any credibility. So leading by example and setting these standards is absolutely crucial. Now, as we look at ways to set standards, and as we look at options for things to do to keep people accountable, we have this example audit form. This is a form that, as a company at DM&A, we've used time and time again across the country and actually across the world to keep people accountable. So we set the standard and we say our cold food needs to be 41 degrees or lower, and we need you to take temps every 2 hours, and we give these different standards and these different expectations, and then we expect people to live up to them. We expect our crews to really be able to, you know, execute at a high level and do things the way that they need to. And to do that, we hold them accountable. So when this form doesn't get filled out, or when we find things that are out of temperature range, that's when we unfortunately have to hold people accountable. We have to write them up. We have to hold them accountable for adhering to these different standards that we've set. So in your
Shawn,
yeah.
So let's step back a little bit. We talked about, your slide before talked about, wait, let me go back. Your slide before talked about implementing these strategies. So if there's cold standards and everyone has HACCP and, you know, you have consistent standards. So when you look at your operation, you have to look at this touch point. So you have to look at the receipt when a food comes in, when the food comes in, from holding in the temperature for the production after it's cooked, where it's going to be held, whether it's in the tray line or point of destination or whatever you call it in your meal assembly approach. What kind of cold, is it a cold steam table? Not a steam table, obviously, that's not smart. A cold table, air curtain, a refrigerated, whatever component it is held. And then when it gets onto the meal assembly, then you're putting together a meal tray, At that point, you're going to do test trays. So what I find in many operations, and many people have told me, is that when they're in an operation, they do the test trays and they have their employees actually eat off those test trays. So they do a couple and they ask different people to come, because when people become accountable, when they're engaged with that tray, which means they're going to consume that tray, there's quite a difference than just taking the temperature. You ask the person, was the taste correct? Was the perception? Doing that a few times a week, having your people, your employees engage with that tray, in a sense, they get a different feeling. It's not just a tray. It's not just going to a patient. It's not going to a resident. But they themselves understand. Taste becomes color. If it's wilted, if it's not, it's the texture of it. All of that, you ask them those questions. As well as filling out this form, there should be, in addition to this, a perception form. What did you feel like when you looked at this tray? This is what your employees. The more you engage your employees, the more they will make a difference in how they hold food and how they prepare food and how they tray food. So this is a great form. It's a sample of it. But in addition to having temperatures, you also have to have your employees engage with that, what they feel, that comment. And test trays have always been done. I've been in industry 35 years, so we've always done test trays. But the difference today is an engagement tray. Have your employees. You will see a difference, because someone may turn around and go, I don't want to eat that. Or if they don't want to eat that, that's perception. Giving a nurse a tray like that, again, you build engagement, therefore accountability increases.
Absolutely. Well, and the other part of that too is that when we have individuals that know that we're watching, they're much more likely to perform. And so if they know that at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, they are going to have you come by and take temperatures, well, guess what? Everything is going to be at the right temperatures most of the time. But that's where the importance of consistent random audits comes in, meaning that you are checking temperatures at different times of the day, both at peak times and off-peak times, because it keeps everyone on their toes so that they know that no matter what time of day, no matter what meal period or whether it's busy or slow, they have to be prepared. They have to have their things at the proper temperatures. They have to have items that look good, because they know at any moment you could come by and do an audit, or another supervisor or manager could come by and do that. So that's why it's important to keep everyone on their toes and do it randomly instead of just at fixed times.
So a good question was asked, before we move ahead, a good question was asked, and I will start it, and then Shawn, maybe you'll. The question was asked is, how does one lead by example if one is not in the kitchen? And that's a really good question. You know, obviously you're empowering your people to do the right job. The way you can do that is by these audits and also by an engagement tray. An engagement tray means that you're going to, maybe a few times a week, tell an employee, bring a tray in from the employee. They're going to think it's a test tray that you're just doing temperatures. But that engagement tray is something, I'd like you to try the food on this today. And obviously, once you start doing it, people are going to realize you're going to be doing engagement trays in addition to test tray temperatures. That engagement tray shows you, through example, you're going to be eating it too. So you're going to show them, does it look good? You're going to discuss it. Again, accountability starts with leadership, and it starts with engagement. You know, we can tell people they need to do the right thing. We need to lead by trying that tray and say, you know, this looks better or not. I have a colleague of mine who runs two long-term care facilities. And what he does is on orientation, he brings people in and has meals served. And he gets feedback from brand new people who have no ownership yet. And he'll hear if the food looks good, it's cold, it sustains its temperature, etc. By doing those engagement trays with new people, he can either turn it around and make it a positive effect for the rest of the site, or and a learning experience. So that's the way you learn by example. And Shawn, how else what would be your take on that?
Well, I would have to ask the question first and foremost, are you never in the kitchen or are you just not in the kitchen very often? And one of the things that I've learned over the years that took
Shawn,
me out of direct op every day. Yeah?
we just missed that part of it. Sorry. If you could say it again.
Okay, yeah. I was just saying that the question would need to be asked, are you never in the kitchen or
Shawn, you're not coming through clearly. I know you're in a remote location, but you're not coming through clearly.
can you, let's
We can
see.
hear you now. We can hear you now. You're hearing okay. We can't hear him. Okay.
Table. How are you doing with that? What's
Shawn,
going on?
Shawn, they weren't hearing you. So we had a little technical difficulty. They weren't hearing you.
Okay.
Okay, now they hear us both. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. So when you're in the kitchen, you can make a big impact by simply acknowledging the team, letting them know that you are there to support them, that there are options, different things that you've talked about in the last couple of weeks, reiterating with them the importance of it, ask them how it's going, get feedback from them, see if there's anything that we could do better, things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
As we move forward with this, we talk about our strategies for having equipment that works for us every day. We've talked about how to help our staffs. We've talked about how to engage.
Shawn, I know you're in a remote location. Maybe you can hold the phone because they're not able to hear you. Okay, so strategies for having food service equipment that works every day. What is the #1 way to ensure that your equipment works
consistently? Now the question, go ahead.
You're going in and out, so I don't know where you are in the hospital. I know you're on site today, so you're going in and out.
I apologize. I'm in one place. It says I have full bars on my phone, so I'm not quite sure what the challenge is. But the #1 way to ensure that our equipment works for us every day is proper maintenance. Now, how do we discover what the proper maintenance is? We want to make sure that we find that directly from our manufacturing partners. Now, whoever we buy the equipment from is now our partner. That manufacturer has a vested interest in our success. We have bought and purchased the equipment, and we want to make sure we're maximizing our return on that. So we find out directly from that manufacturer what is the best thing to do annually, monthly, quarterly. We want to find out exactly what we can do to maximize our investment and keep this equipment running smoothly. Because as most of you know and have probably experienced, when you have failures with equipment, it's terrible. It is absolutely draining to your staff, to you, to your bottom line. And so making sure that we understand directly from the manufacturer what we need to do to take care of that and maximize that equipment is the #1 way that we can make sure that equipment works for us all day, every day, 365 days a year. Now, when we talk about our refrigeration and our equipment, we need to discuss different standards. Standards for how we utilize that equipment. And as we talk about industry standards, this is an example of a diagram that shows where we can maximize items in our refrigerated freezers and walk-ins. Items towards the back would be items like our proteins, our items that are more susceptible to bacterial growth. We want to make sure that they are in the coldest spot of that storage. Why? Because if we can keep the temperature lower on those, chances are we're going to be saving a safer end product. Whereas certain items like some of our produce items, if they were stored closer to the front where it's maybe not quite as cold, that still gives us the ability to store them and extend the shelf life on them in that cold storage area. But it also gives us more room to keep those higher volatile items towards the back in a safer area.
So as you're looking at this picture, visualize if your refrigerator looks like this and how you can rearrange it so that it does give you the most maximizing cold food success. If it's not like this, this is maybe something you should consider if your foods aren't sustaining themselves to coldness, if it's not in the refrigeration for this period of time under these conditions, that's where maybe some of your challenge is lying. So visualize what your refrigerator looks like, and then when you get the PowerPoint, maybe print that out and see how you can maximize that cold temperature.
And going back to what we were talking about as far as leading by example, show that to your staff. You can see on the screen different temperature ranges for different items. Share this with your staff also. Engage them, empower them, help them to understand why it's important and why decisions are being made, because they're much more liable to buy into certain things happening than somebody just saying, well, this is why we're doing it because we're doing it this way. If they understand why decisions are made, they're much more liable to understand, buy in, and then consistently do those things.
And someone had asked about different temperature zones. These are the zones of refrigeration. But again, for refrigeration, this is the standard. However, once it exits the cold storage component, that's when you're holding it and you're preparing it in your touch point. And that's when you have to consider what tools am I using to maximize and keep that food within the safe zones. Again, we talked at the beginning about receipt. Upon receipt, how many of you can actually say that you take temperatures of your food as it's entering, especially the frozen or refrigerated ones? That's crucial because if it's already below the safe zone, you may already have a challenge from quality control. You know, again, it'll get cold once you put it in the proper temperature, but you may already have a problem with quality control.
Well, and I would add to that too, in giving a real-life example. We have worked with international clients in some of the hottest areas in the world, namely the Middle East. And one of the practices that they have over there is that they will spend thousands of dollars on large blast chillers that will actually sit on the back dock receiving area, because as the delivery trucks are driving through the deserts at 120, 140 degrees, the temperature, even though they're refrigerated trucks, the temperature can't help but struggle to stay down. And so as those items are received, they will actually blast chill a lot of those items before they go into the the facilities, because they found that by simply putting them into a walk-in or a reach-in, they just weren't quite coming down to temperature either in enough time, and it was affecting the quality. So that is a real-life example of how refrigeration directly affects the quality and the safety of our items. Now, we've also got some best practices that myself I've seen throughout my career and throughout working in hospitals and healthcare environments. These are things that are directly applicable to, I would say, every facility I've ever been into, regardless of whether it's the small critical access 25-bed hospital to the large, medium-sized nursing home all the way to the 1,000-bed hospital. There are these best practices should be able to work for anyone, and I've seen them work for everyone. When we want to keep cold things cold, we want to ask ourselves these questions again. What container is the food going into? Where are the items being stored? And how are they being served? So we want to ask ourselves these questions, because I'll give you another classic example. When we go to chill something, what do most of us do? And I can already answer this question. You have cookies that come out of the oven. We have rolls that come out of the oven. We have maybe a sauce or a soup or something that we want to cook and then chill and then reheat the next day for convenience purposes. What do? Well, what chances are we're throwing them into the walk-in. Now, going back to the example of the blast chiller on the back dock, part of the purpose of doing that is that a blast chiller is designed to cool things down, and it's designed to cool things down rapidly. A walk-in is not designed to cool. It's designed to keep cold things cold, but it is not designed to cool them down initially. That's why it takes much longer for that to happen when we put those items into those walk-ins with our big ice plungers or whatever we might be doing to help cool those down. It takes much longer to cool that down versus if we invest in these blast chillers that are meant to do that. So we really have to, that's part of the purpose of partnering with our manufacturer partners and understanding what they have to offer, is that whatever our challenges might be, they probably have a solution that can help us. And it doesn't always come in the form of one piece of equipment to do one thing. A lot of times the manufacturers understand the need to have pieces of equipment that can do multiple things. But we need to have them as partners to really understand that is their business. Their business is to understand what the challenges are and how to meet those challenges. And it's the same thing with our hot items. Even though we're focusing on the cold, we need to think about how are items being cooked, what happens to them after they're cooked, and how long do they hold for. That directly affects everything from how big or small we cut our vegetables, what types of foods we're serving. All those things come into play, but we have to ask these questions initially. Otherwise, we may not start out the way we need to. We need to start out with the end in mind and work backwards.
So Shawn has been telling us tips for elevating taste experience, how you're holding the food. He mentioned some ingredients, and he's probably going to tell you some more about the challenges with certain cold foods after. And he's giving you some strategies for working with your food service partners and your vendors into making sure that they come in on a periodic basis and check it for you, as well as if you have service maintenance contract with people, have them check it for you. Don't wait till it breaks down. He also mentioned some best practices for keeping food the way the refrigeration is set up. I wanted to talk a little bit about meal assembly. And when we talk about meal assembly, we think of cold food items such as a salad, such as a milk, such as a yogurt, such as a Jell-O, pudding, ice creams, ices, popsicles. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, oranges, fruit. So we talk about cold. Those
a chilled orange, a chilled apple, those kind of items during your meal assembly have best practice. So what's your best practice? Well, let me tell you a story. I was in an 800-bed long-term facility last year, and the food service director had asked me to come in with the all-you-serve rep. And we went in because he said he needed carts to keep his cold food cold. So we went in and we said, can we look around as business partners? And he let us go through the meal assembly line, and we looked at different touch points. And what we found is that the proper refrigeration for the cold items was lacking. Many of you may be, especially in long-term care, may know the item on the left is that ice box or milk crate. Milk crates are put in and they're piled on top. And what we were finding is that instead of people keeping the milk crates below line, which would have been better, what happened is they brought out all the milks for the tray line all together, so they were stacked on top. As you may guess, milks weren't keeping cold or sustained temperature at all. That went with, he had several ice boxes around the kitchen, and the same thing was going on. Not only that, but some were like half cold, half not. So again, that was with the equipment and maintenance. You've got to make sure your equipment is cold and that those air curtains are maintaining at less than 41 degrees. If they're not cold when they're put into the units that are warm, they're not going to all of a sudden miraculously become cold. So when we went through the tray line, those are the touch points that we found. The items, they had the cold. Remember the vertical air curtains that you flip back so you can get in? Your employees don't like it in front of them. The reason those weather strips were put in, or those air strips, was to sustain cold. If they're put back, you're already losing. So all you served came out with a solution, and their solution was a vertical air curtain that the door can be open and sustain itself at proper temperature for 90 minutes. So what he decided to do is get several air curtains and put them in. The good thing about it is that when the meal period was done, they just closed the doors with what's left over. You didn't have to have people handling and transferring things again. So again, look at your kitchen, look at your meal assembly line, see where your items are not cold as they could be, especially in those ice boxes. If you can't afford to get an air curtain at this point, very economical because it sustains the temperature vertically, at least consider one, if not several. But if you can't, consider bringing out batch cold items, which means bring out a few items at a time. Don't have someone bring out for 500 beds or 600 beds or 200 beds and have it stacked on top. Just because it's on the icebox and not in the icebox, it won't sustain itself. So consider those kind of things when you're looking at it. Vertical air curtains aren't used, and they're miraculously. They really do save, they sustain it. The other thing I wanted to mention here is about blast chillers. A lot of people will put milks or yogurts or certain puddings into them to just chill them and bring them below so that they sustain themselves as well. So look at the tools that are available to you. The other thing is, I wanted to go ahead a little bit and then I'll go back. The other thing is about cold is that those, in addition, there's something called a eutectic drawer, and All You Serve has it, and it's a cold drawer that fits into any of your tray delivery carts. And what it does is that you would put your jellos, your fruits into this drawer and in your cart, and you would match it up on the floors or with your residents, but it will sustain for 90 minutes. So again, there's another cost-effective tool out there. Know that there are several tools. This fits into any one or two drawer. So on meal assembly, consider your blast chillers, consider tabletop models, consider your air curtains, consider your eutectic drawers. When you get the food in your cart, the biggest challenge I hear besides that is I have remote areas to get to. It's very long to get. It's a horizontal facility. Consider things like a multi-temperature cart that maintains your temperature 30 minutes without power and 90 minutes plugged in. So if you plug it in and you're bringing it to it, you can leave it on the floor for 30 minutes. It works great with feeders, sustaining the temperature, behavioral health hospitals, excellent way for congregate feeding. So look at tools that are out there, because this will sustain the food. Remember, you can have wonderful food that's prepped great, that looks great, that tastes great in the kitchen, but then the percentage of patient satisfaction diminishes as you get to the resident, to that last touch point, that last component. So again, we've offered some best practices to consider when you get there. Shawn?
Thank you, Marcia. Those are great insights. Definitely things to consider, and half the battle in some of these situations that we're talking about is just knowing what your options are. Many times, what we end up ordering or sticking with are things that we've seen, and that's the purpose of trade shows. That's the purpose of webinars, is to educate you so that you can make the best decision for your facility and know what your options are. Like we talked about in the beginning of this webinar, we wanted to give you some tips for elevating your patient taste experience. Holding cold things cold, how to chill. There's lots of different insights that we've been able to give here as far as using the proper equipment for the proper usage. For example, the blast chiller is meant to chill things down. A walk-in is meant to hold cold things cold. As we use that and we maintain those things by checking with our manufacturers reps and seeing exactly what it is that you need to do that will make you very successful. Some of the strategies that will make that equipment work for you every day is just more or less keeping an eye on it and making sure that the condenser is clear, that the airflow is coming through nicely, that you're not impeding any of that happening, that if there is annual maintenance or lubrication or something that needs to be added or done to the machines and the compressors, that's happening regularly. I can't even tell you how many facilities I go into. I would probably even say, at least 7 out of 10 are struggling with this, and they keep wondering, why am I paying thousands of dollars every year to have a service company come out and service this, when in reality they could spend, an extra $100, $200 a year and have that annual or quarterly or monthly maintenance done and save themselves both a lot of headache and a lot of money. Some of our best practices for keeping our cold temperatures cold is, again, to use the proper equipment and use it the way it's intended to be used. Don't set the milk on top. Make sure that it's down inside. Make sure that we're doing what the manufacturer recommends. A true story when it comes to air curtains. Having been involved with this company for a number of years now, I've been a part of a lot of room service and a lot of room service go-lives. And I can tell you without hesitation that the air curtains are absolutely crucial to delivering a patient taste experience consistent with the food that we want to put out there. Keeping the air curtains absolutely keep things at the ideal temperatures for longer periods of time, as well as allowing convenience for our tray line staff. And that's what it's about. As much as we are serving our patients and our guests and our clients, we also have a responsibility to our people, to those people that work with us in the trenches all day, every day. We want to make sure that we're doing what we can to make their jobs effective and make sure that they have the understanding, the quality of working in our facilities that they desire, because ultimately that will keep them around longer and allow us to offer a consistent product.
They also,
so
the good point you made is that ergonomically, the air curtains also, from a tool point of view, ergonomically, a tray that's eutectic drawer is easily then bending down. So then one of the points you made I thought was excellent, Shawn, on that way, as well as you made a lot of excellent points, but just to reiterate.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Marcia. I've definitely appreciated the opportunity to be here talking today. I look forward to any questions that anyone might have. Again, you can contact us for more information about DM&A. We are headquartered in San Diego, but we travel throughout the world. You can reach us at info@destination10.com if you have any questions or comments or things that you'd like to share, or any ideas that you might need for implementing and doing some of the things we talked about today.
And I think we've answered some of the questions as we were going through it, so I think best practices. But please, if you have any other questions, send it, and I'll get it directly to Shawn. Call us if we can help you. All you serve. If you want to talk about the air curtain view Technic drawer, meal delivery for feeders. We also have a whole bunch of other meal assembly and meal delivery equipment. Here is our contact information, and we're so glad that All You Serve continues to sponsor these programs. Everything will be available early next week at www.allyouserve.com. Follow us on Twitter. We get some great information out there. Engage with us on LinkedIn, Twitter, in the social media world. Also, we're working together, putting together a Pinterest on healthcare food service. How do we elevate it? So send us your pictures, great things, and do great things out there. I'll leave you with one thought. Because Halloween's around the corner, here's one quick joke. How do you make a milkshake? Give it a good scare. And happy Halloween. Thank you for joining us today. See you again soon.
Thank you.